The desperate call, the war that never ended. War between the Sakran Republic and the Voldrith Dominion had been raging for 150 years. 150 years of death, destruction, and devastation that had consumed 17 star systems and claimed billions of lives. In the Outer Rim territories, where the two civilizations clashed, space itself seemed scarred by endless conflict. The Sakran Republic was home to an amphibious species that had evolved on a water world called Tide's Home. Their bodies were sleek and adapted for both land and sea, covered in scales that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. These patterns were how Sakran communicated complex emotions and thoughts. Their technology reflected their defensive nature. Sakran shields were legendary across the galaxy, energy barriers that could absorb incredible amounts of punishment. Their stations were fortresses. Their ships were bunkers that moved through space. They had learned long ago that survival meant endurance. The Voldrith Dominion represented something entirely different. The Voldrith were not flesh and blood, but beings of pure energy contained within crystalline matrices. They looked like walking sculptures of light, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Their consciousness existed as electromagnetic patterns, and they could transfer between specially designed vessels when needed. The Voldrith had developed weapons that could tear through almost any defense. Their energy cannons could vaporize asteroids. Their plasma torpedoes could crack planetary crusts. When Voldrith fleets attacked, they attacked with the fury of stars gone supernova. How it all began, the war had started over a discovery. Both civilizations had found the same ancient artifact on a dead world between their territories. The artifact was a data repository left behind by a species called the Architects, who had vanished 3 million years ago. Inside that repository was knowledge, technology beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. Both the Sakran and the Voldrith claimed ownership. Both refused to share. Diplomatic talks collapsed within weeks. The first shots were fired over the artifact world, and from there, the conflict spread like a plague. Now, 15 decades later, neither side could remember why winning mattered anymore. They fought because their parents had fought. They fought because their children would fight. The war had become their identity, woven into the fabric of both civilizations. Peace was a word that had lost all meaning. Sanctuary Station floated in neutral space, technically belonging to neither empire, but caught between them like a leaf between two stones. The station was massive, a rotating wheel 30 kilometers in diameter. It had been built 200 years ago as a trading hub, back when the Sakran and Voldrith had been business partners instead of enemies. Now it served a different purpose. It was home to refugees, civilians from both sides who had fled the fighting, who wanted no part in the endless war. 80 million souls lived on Sanctuary Station. Sakran farmers who had watched their ocean cities burned. Voldrith artists whose crystal galleries had been shattered. Children of both species who had never known peace. They lived together in cramped corridors, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing hope that someday the madness would end. For years, both empires had left Sanctuary alone. It was neutral ground, protected by ancient treaties that even war had not completely erased. But treaties meant nothing when desperation set in. The Sakran Republic needed the station's position. It sat at the junction of 3 hyperspace corridors, lanes that could move fleets quickly across the sector. Control Sanctuary, and you could reinforce any battle within hours instead of days. The Voldrith Dominion realized the same thing. Both empires decided that Sanctuary Station was too valuable to remain neutral. Commander Thesa Morwind stood on the bridge of the Sakran defense platform Guardian's Watch, staring at tactical displays that showed nothing but bad news. She was young for a Sakran commander, only 70 years old, but the war had aged her. Her scales had lost their vibrant blue color, fading to a tired gray. The bioluminescent patterns that danced across her skin flickered with exhaustion and stress. Guardian's Watch was the last defense platform still operational. Sanctuary Station had 12 defensive satellites when the battle began 6 days ago. Now only Guardian's Watch remained, its shields flickering, its weapons nearly depleted. Around the station, the wreckage of 100 ships drifted in the darkness. Sakrin vessels with their hulls breached. Voldrith cruisers that had burned too bright and then gone dark forever. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Van Crestfall, approached with the latest report. His patterns showed deep concern, colors pulsing red and orange. Commander, the Voldrith are regrouping for another assault. We count 47 warships in attack formation. Our shields are at 18%. We have maybe 3 more volleys from our main cannons. Then we are firing on emergency reserves. Thesa looked at the numbers and felt something cold settle in her chest. How long until the Sakrin reinforcement fleet arrives? 19 hours, Commander. Admiral Shorebreak is pushing his engines to maximum, but 19 hours is the fastest possible time. 19 hours. She looked at her shields again. 18%. 3 volleys. They would not last 3 more hours, let alone 19. And when Guardian's Watch fell, Sanctuary Station would be defenseless. Both fleets would descend on it like predators on wounded prey. 80 million civilians would become casualties of a war they had fled. The impossible choice, for the first time in her career. Commander Thesa Morwind considered doing something that would likely end with her court-martialed or executed. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the Galactic Council emergency frequency. Maximum priority. The officer's patterns flashed surprise, but she obeyed. The channel opened. The Galactic Council was an organization of 43 spacefaring civilizations. Neither the Sakrin Republic nor the Voldrith Dominion were members. They had both refused to join, seeing the Council as weak and ineffective. But the Council had laws, and one of those laws was absolute. Any member species had to respond to humanitarian distress calls. Commander, Morwind took a breath and sent her message into the void. This is Commander Thesa Morwind of the Sakrin Republic, calling on behalf of Sanctuary Station. We have 80 million civilian refugees under imminent threat. Both Sakrin and Voldrith fleets are converging on this position. Our defenses will fail within hours. We formally request immediate humanitarian assistance under Galactic Council Protocol 7. Any council, member species capable of responding, please help. Sanctuary Station coordinates attached. Morwind out. She closed the channel and immediately felt the weight of what she had done. Asking the Council for help was an admission of weakness. The Sakrin military command would be furious. But Commander Morwind had stopped caring about politics. She cared about 80 million lives. Humanity's response, the message traveled at faster than light speeds, bouncing through communication relays scattered across the galaxy. It reached the nearest Council monitoring station in 4 minutes. From there, it was automatically forwarded to all member species with ships in the region. Most species were too far away. Others were engaged in their own problems. The message might have gone unanswered, if not for one recently admitted Council member. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 8 years ago. They were newcomers, primitives by galactic standards. Humans had barely left their own solar system when they discovered faster-than-light travel. They had no great military tradition. Their ships were small and experimental. Their technology was generations behind the established powers. Most Council members viewed humans as enthusiastic children, eager to learn but not yet ready for real responsibility. Asterisk, the human ship, Endeavour, was on a mapping mission in the Outer Rim when it received Commander Morwind's distress call. Captain Marcus Webb read the message 3 times before calling his senior officers to the bridge. Webb was 52 years old, a career officer who had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy before humanity even had faster-than-light capability. He was tall and lean, with gray hair cut military short and eyes that missed nothing. His executive officer, Commander Rachel Torres, arrived first. She read the distress call and immediately shook her head. "Captain, we are one ship, a science vessel. We have no weapons beyond point defense systems." That message describes 2 massive battle fleets. What could we possibly do? Webb looked at the tactical data attached to the distress call. He saw the scope of the battle, the firepower involved, the impossible odds. By every logical measure, Commander Torres was right. One human science ship could not affect the outcome of this battle. But Webb had not spent 3 decades in the military by always following logic. How long until we can reach Sanctuary Station? He asked. His navigator, Lieutenant James Park, ran the calculations. "At maximum FTL, 12 hours, sir. But the distress call says their defenses will fail in 8. Webb nodded slowly. "Then we will have to be creative." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a response to Commander Morwind. Tell her we are coming. Tell her to hold on for 12 hours. We will be there." The message was sent. On Guardian's watch, Commander Morwind received it and felt something she had not felt in years. Not quite hope, but perhaps the possibility of hope. She did not know what one human ship could do against 2 battle fleets. But she knew that someone had answered. Someone was coming. Captain Webb stood on the bridge of Endeavor and began making preparations. He called Earth and requested emergency authorization. He contacted the 3 other human ships in the sector and ordered them to rendezvous at his coordinates. He reviewed everything humanity had learned about Sakrin and Voldrith technology in the 8 years since joining the Council. Then Captain Marcus Webb began to plan something that would change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. He began to plan a war that would last exactly 1 minute. Asterisk the 1-minute war. The human fleet arrives 12 hours after Commander Thissa Morwind sent her desperate plea into the void. Something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to ripple near Sanctuary Station, and 4 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel with perfect precision. They appeared exactly where they said they would, exactly when they promised. In a galaxy where military operations were measured in days and weeks, such accuracy was remarkable. Commander Morwind stared at her displays in disbelief. Guardian's watch had somehow survived the 12 hours, though just barely. Her shields were at 4%. Her weapons were completely depleted. The station had taken direct hits, and 17,000 civilians were dead. Both the Sakrin and Voldrith fleets had pulled back temporarily, regrouping for a final coordinated assault that would crush the last defenses and claim Sanctuary Station. And now, into this maelstrom of violence came 4 human ships. They were small. Shockingly small compared to the massive warships that filled the battlefield. The largest human vessel was barely 300 meters long, tiny compared to Sakrin battlecruisers that measured over 2 kilometers. The human ships had strange designs, smooth and sleek, where other species built angular and aggressive. They looked more like exploration vessels than warships. They had no visible heavy weapons, no obvious shield projectors, nothing that suggested they could survive even a single volley from either fleet. Lieutenant Van Crestfall's patterns flashed confusion and dismay. "Commander, those are the reinforcements? 4 exploration ships? They will be destroyed in seconds if either fleet targets them." Morwind said nothing. She was watching her sensors, and something was strange. The human ships were broadcasting on all frequencies, a simple message repeated in Sakrin, Voldrith, and Galactic Standard. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are here under Galactic Council humanitarian protocols. We respectfully request all military vessels to cease hostilities and withdraw to minimum safe distance from Sanctuary Station. The Galaxy watches aboard the saccharine flagship Tidal Fury. Admiral Kryn Shorebreak received the human transmission and actually laughed. It was a bitter sound, full of exhaustion and dark humor. The Admiral was 300 years old, ancient for a saccharine. He had commanded fleets for over a century. His scales were nearly white with age, and his patterns moved slowly, like a dying light. His second in command, Captain Vest Deep Current, spoke carefully. "Admiral, the humans are requesting we withdraw." The transmission is quite polite. Shorebreak's patterns flashed amusement tinged with sadness. 4 tiny ships, and they ask 200 warships to leave. I almost admire their optimism. Send a response. Thank them for coming. Advise them to retreat immediately if they value their lives. This battle is beyond their capability to effect. On the Voldreth command vessel Eternal Radiance, High Lord Zenkar analyzed the human ships with interest. Zenkar was old even by Voldreth standards. His energy matrix contained within a crystal body that glowed with amber light. He had fought in this war for 97 years, and had long ago stopped feeling anything about death. But these humans intrigued him. "They come as promised," he said to his tactical coordinator. 4 ships against our combined 400 vessels. Either they are fools, or they know something we do not. His coordinator, a younger Voldreth named Sishra, whose crystal form pulsed with blue luminescence, responded with skepticism. "Our intelligence reports indicate human military technology is primitive. They have no weapons that could threaten our shields. They have no shields that could withstand our weapons. Logic suggests they are fools." Zenkar considered this. Perhaps. But I have lived long enough to learn that assumptions are dangerous. He opened a channel to the human ships. "This is High Lord Zenkar of the Voldreth Dominion. We acknowledge your arrival. We respect your humanitarian intentions. However, Sanctuary Station sits on strategically vital territory. We cannot withdraw. If you remain, you will be caught in the crossfire. Depart now while you can dot Captain Webb's plan on the Bridge of Endeavor." Captain Marcus Webb listened to both responses and nodded as if he had expected exactly these answers. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were scared. All of them knew the odds, but they trusted their captain. Webb had a reputation for finding solutions where none seemed to exist. Commander Rachel Torres stood beside him, reviewing the tactical situation. "Sir, both fleets are holding position. Neither has targeted us yet, but our sensors show they are preparing for a major assault. When they move, we will have minutes at best before Sanctuary Station's shields collapse." Webb pulled up a holographic display showing both fleets in detail. Saccharine ships clustered on one side, their powerful shields glowing like blue soap bubbles around each vessel. Voldreth ships on the other side, their weapons charged and radiating lethal energy. Between them, Sanctuary Station hung vulnerable, and Guardian's watch flickered with failing power. Lieutenant James Park spoke from the navigation station. "Captain, I have calculated firing solutions as you requested. All targets locked. The quantum displacement generators are charged and ready." Webb took a deep breath. For 8 years, humanity had been in space, learning from other species, studying their technology, their methods, their wars. And humans had noticed something interesting. Every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy had developed technology in similar ways. They all used shields based on graviton manipulation. They all used weapons based on energy projection or kinetic acceleration. They all fought wars the same way their ancestors had fought 10,000 years ago, just with bigger ships and more powerful weapons. Humanity had taken a different approach. When humans discovered faster-than-light travel, it had not been through conventional hyperspace engines. Human scientists had stumbled upon quantum displacement theory, a way to shift matter between dimensional states. It was unstable and dangerous, which was why human ships were small. Large vessels could not maintain quantum coherence. But that limitation had forced human engineers to think creatively. What they created was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something the galaxy had never seen before. The countdown asterisk, Captain Webb opened a channel to both fleets, to Sanctuary Station, and to every ship in the battle zone. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "This is Captain Marcus Webb. I want to thank both Admiral Shorebreak and High Lord Zenkar for your responses. I understand you believe you cannot withdraw. I understand you believe 4 human ships cannot affect this battle. I am going to prove you wrong. In 60 seconds, this war will be over. I recommend all vessels brace for quantum displacement." On Tidal Fury, Admiral Shorebreak's patterns flashed confusion. Quantum displacement? What is he talking about? On Eternal Radiance, High Lord Zenkar's crystal form pulsed with sudden alertness. "Evacuate all Voldrith personnel to shielded core chambers immediately. That is not a weapon type in our database. Unknown variables are dangerous. Aboard Guardian's watch, Commander Morwind watched her countdown timer. 60 seconds. She did not know what would happen, but she gave orders to evacuate all personnel from exposed sections and seal emergency bulkheads. If the humans failed, at least she had bought a few more minutes. Webb nodded to Lieutenant Park. Execute .1. Minute what happened next would be studied by military academicians for generations. It would change warfare across the galaxy. It would force every civilization to reconsider their assumptions about combat, about technology, about the nature of force itself. The 4 human ships did not fire weapons. They did not launch missiles. They did not emit energy beams. Instead, they activated their quantum displacement generators simultaneously, creating a cascading field effect that expanded outward at the speed of light. The field was invisible, undetectable by conventional sensors, but its effects were immediate and absolute. Every ship in both fleets, all 400 vessels, suddenly experienced quantum displacement. For exactly 0.3 seconds, each ship existed in a slightly different dimensional state. During that brief moment, the quantum bonds holding their power cores stable were disrupted. Fusion reactors went offline. Antimatter containment fields collapsed safely into emergency buffers. Energy weapons lost coherence. Shield generators went dormant. In less than 1 second, 400 warships became 400 lifeless hulks drifting in space. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply turned off as if someone had flipped a switch. Every ship lost all power simultaneously. Life support switched to emergency batteries. Artificial gravity failed. Lights went dark except for emergency strips. Weapons went silent. And then just as suddenly, the quantum field collapsed. The ships returned to normal dimensional state, but their primary power systems remained offline. Would remain offline for hours while engineers went through restart procedures, while safety systems ran diagnostics, while crews recovered from the shock of what had just happened. Silence in the void for a long moment. There was absolute silence across the battlefield. Hundreds of thousands of Saccharin and Voldrith personnel floated in zero gravity aboard darkened ships, trying to understand what had happened. Sensors were down. Communications were down. Everything was down. Only the 4 human ships remained active, their quantum generators cooling, their systems running perfectly. Captain Webb's voice broke the silence, broadcasting on emergency frequencies that ran on backup power. "This is Captain Webb. All ships are undamaged. All personnel are unharmed. Your primary power systems will restore in approximately 6 hours. During that time, We will be evacuating civilians from Sanctuary Station to safe coordinates. Any vessel that attempts to restore weapons systems early will be displaced again. This battle is over. Aboard Tidal Fury, Admiral Shorebreak floated in darkness, held in place only by magnetic boots. Around him, his crew scrambled to activate emergency systems. His mind raced to comprehend what had happened. The humans had shut down his entire fleet without firing a shot, without destroying anything. They had simply turned off 200 warships as easily as extinguishing candles dot his communication system crackled to life on emergency power. Captain Vest Deep Current's voice came through, shaken and amazed. Admiral, our engineers report all systems are intact. No damage, just offline. They have never seen anything like this. The humans somehow disrupted our power cores at a quantum level. Shorebreak's patterns flickered in the darkness, displaying something he had not felt in decades: respect. He opened an emergency channel. Captain Webb, this is Admiral Shorebreak. You have made your point quite effectively. The Sakran Republic fleet will not interfere with the evacuation. You have our word. A new understanding on eternal radiance. High Lord Zenkar floated in the command chamber, his crystal body the only light source as emergency systems slowly activated. Around him, Junior Voldrith moved in confusion and fear. They had been rendered helpless by an enemy they had dismissed as primitives. But Zenkar had lived long enough to recognize a fundamental shift when he saw one. He activated his emergency transmitter. Captain Webb, this is High Lord Zenkar. The Voldrith Dominion acknowledges your capability. We will withdraw once power is restored. May I ask a question? Webb's response came immediately. Of course, High Lord. Why did you not destroy us? Zenkar asked. You clearly have the capability. You disabled 400 warships in seconds. You could have killed us all just as easily. There was a pause. Then Webb spoke, and his words carried across the void to every ship, every station, every listening device in the sector. Because killing you would not save those 80 million civilians. Because destruction is easy, but preservation is hard. Because humanity learned a long time ago that the greatest strength is knowing when not to use force. Your war has lasted 150 years, because both of you are powerful enough to hurt each other, but not wise enough to stop. We ended your war in 1 minute, not with superior weapons, but with a different philosophy. On Guardian's watch, Commander Thesa Morwind listened to Webb's words and felt her patterns display colors she had not shown in years. Hope, relief, gratitude. She opened a channel. Captain Webb, this is Commander Morwind. On behalf of 80 million souls, thank you. What you did here today, how did you even conceive of such a thing? Webb's response was simple. We asked a different question. Everyone asks how to build bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. We asked how to stop a war without adding to the death toll. Turns out, when you ask different questions, you find different answers. The aftermath, over the next 8 hours, the human ships coordinated the evacuation of Sanctuary Station. They worked with both Sakrin and Voldrith personnel who, stripped of their weapons and their power, found themselves cooperating for the first time in living memory. Refugee transport ships launched continuously, carrying civilians to safe worlds beyond the war zone. Captain Webb stood on the bridge of Endeavor, watching the evacuation proceed smoothly. Commander Torres approached him, a slight smile on her face. Sir, we are receiving transmission requests from dozens of news networks, military analysts, and even the Galactic Council leadership. Everyone wants to know how we did this. Webb nodded. Send them the technical specifications. All of them. Let every species in the galaxy know exactly how quantum displacement works. Torres looked shocked. Sir, that technology could be weaponized. If we give it away freely, we lose our advantage. Webb, turned to face her. Commander, we never wanted an advantage. We wanted peace. If sharing this technology means other species can end conflicts without bloodshed, then we should share it. Humanity did not come to the stars to dominate. We came to explore, to learn, to help. Today, we helped. That is enough. On Tidal Fury, as engineers slowly brought systems back online, Admiral Shorebreak called a conference with his senior officers. They discussed what had happened, what it meant, what the Saccharin Republic should do next. Finally, the ancient admiral made a decision. Open a channel to Voldrith Command. Tell High Lord Zenkar, I want to discuss a ceasefire. Permanent ceasefire. This war has cost us enough dot on eternal radiance. Zenkar received the message and felt something shift in his ancient consciousness. He had fought for nearly a century. He had killed millions. He had watched his civilization pour its resources into an endless war. And 4 human ships had ended it in 60 seconds. Not through destruction, but through simple overwhelming competence. Tell Admiral Shorebreak I accept. Zenkar responded. Send diplomats to neutral ground. It is time we remembered how to talk instead of shoot. 1 minute changed everything. 3 weeks later, representatives from the Saccharin Republic and the Voldrith Dominion met on Sanctuary Station to begin peace negotiations. The station had been repaired, its refugees allowed to return home or settle permanently. Commander Thesa Morwind had been promoted and given command of the station's defense, though now that defense was aimed at keeping peace rather than fighting war. Captain Marcus Webb attended the opening ceremonies at the request of both sides. He stood in the grand hall, surrounded by Saccharin with their bioluminescent patterns and Voldrith with their crystalline bodies, and watched as ancient enemies shook hands for the first time in 150 years. Admiral Shorebreak approached him, patterns displaying deep respect. Captain Webb, my government has asked me to express our gratitude. More than that, they have asked me to convey a question. How did your species develop such wisdom? You have been in space for less than a decade, yet you understand peace better than civilizations that have traveled the stars for millennia. Webb smiled. Admiral, humanity has fought wars for our entire history. Thousands of wars, millions dead, entire generations lost to violence. We learned wisdom the hard way, through pain and loss and regret. When we finally reached the stars, we promised ourselves we would do better. We would be better. Today was us keeping that promise. High Lord Zenkar joined them, his amber light pulsing thoughtfully. The Galactic Council is studying your quantum displacement technology. They say it will revolutionize peacekeeping operations. Conflicts that would have lasted years can now be ended in minutes with minimal casualties. You have given the galaxy a gift, Captain. Webb shook his head. We gave the galaxy a tool. Whether it becomes a gift or a curse depends on how it is used. I hope your people, and all people, will use it wisely. As the peace ceremony began, as former enemies stood together and pledged to end 150 years of bloodshed, Captain Marcus Webb thought about the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. They had entered a war zone expecting to fail. They had faced impossible odds with inadequate resources. And they had won not through violence, but through innovation, through compassion, through the simple human belief that there had to be a better way. The war had lasted 150 years. Humanity ended it in 1 minute. And in doing so, they proved that sometimes the greatest power is not the *ability to destroy, but the wisdom to preserve. That was humanity's true strength, and it was a strength the galaxy was only beginning to understand. *.